name's Yvonne Max, and I'm the founder and the chair of the channel community and the founder and CEO of Co-Chair, a coaching and consulting practice, and also the channel community's gold supporter. Welcome to the next episode of Smashing the Class Ceiling. In this series, I'll be interviewing and showcasing some of the fantastic individuals in the channel who have all come from a low social economic background, but have gone on to build incredibly successful careers. They'll be sharing their stories of how they navigated the corporate corridors and smashed through that class ceiling. So without delay, I would like to welcome my very next guest, Steven Mullaghan. So Steven is the Strategic Partner Development for Fintech at Microsoft and also co-chairs the Social Mobility Network. Thank you so much, Steven, for agreeing to come on the show and share your story with us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Yvonne.
Oh, no, you're welcome. I'm really excited. So, Steven, we were only introduced quite recently by a mutual industry friend of ours after knowing that we had a shared passion for social mobility. Then when obviously we had a call, I had a very small glimpse into your upbringing and I knew straight away that I wanted you to share your story. So tell me about where it is that you grew up and talk to me about your early career.
Yeah, of course. You may or may not be able to tell from the accent because it has mellowed, but originally from Northern Ireland. So I grew up, I guess, as in a typical working class background, if you like. Grew up in a council house in a small town in Northern Ireland, and spent many formative years there. My parents split up whenever I was quite young. But I was very fortunate. I had, a big loving family on both sides, really, which was great. There wasn't a lot of money around. Both my parents had factory jobs. So I kind of went to school there. I left school at 16 with few GCSEs. I wouldn't say I had a lot, but I kind of followed suit and went into a factory role as an apprentice engineer, building buses, actually.
Building
Um,
buses.
Building buses. So yeah, I went and did that, and I was doing that for a couple of years. There was there was a lot of pressure to earn. I think if I wasn't going into that higher education role, because none of my parents went to university or anything like that there, then I think there was kind of pressure to go and start earning as quick as possible. So did that. I did it for a couple of years. But actually, there was a lot of people who were actually there who were pushing me, saying, "Why didn't you've got 5 or 6 GCSEs, all kind of C's, I think, a couple of B's." People pushing me into higher education and the job, and I was like, maybe. And then my family were like, they were less sure. They were like, "You've got a good job as an apprentice here. Like, well, you don't want to be giving that up." It was around 2008, actually, so it was around the financial crisis. But made the decision to go back to college
Right.
and went and studied a BTech in business and did well at that. So that kind of paved my way to university, first in my family to go. And I went to Newcastle for that, or Northumbria in Newcastle. And in my degree, marketing degree, had a year placement, and that year was with I was lucky enough to I looked for various different places, but I came across this role at Microsoft, and I applied for that and got my placement there. So that's kind of the early upbringing and the stages of where I got. But yeah, it's quite formative time to grow up in Northern Ireland. It was a great place.
So making buses to an apprenticeship, then obviously at Microsoft, that's quite a transformation. And you say you were lucky enough to get the internship or the placement at Microsoft, but things don't happen just by luck.
Hmm.
So you've got to take credit for that. And I'm assuming then that was how you got into the channel, but that's your first proper role in the tech industry. How did that evolve?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at, so there's probably more to that story. I think and this is probably as a result of my upbringing, I had lots of part-time jobs. You name it, I did it, from washing cars to working in pubs to being a petrol pump attendant. So with many of those jobs, and I speak to this whenever I'm engaging with young people, actually, the experience that you build, even through all of those different types of roles, is key because you're building transferable skills. So I was able to do that, and that led me actually whenever I was at university, and this was kind of my foot in the door and how I managed to get the internship. I saw on Facebook they were advertising for a Windows 8 ambassador on Facebook of all places, and I just stumbled upon that on Facebook, if you like. I applied for it, and that was in my second year. So I was going around campus trying to do like product demos of Windows 8 and trying to get folks interested in, obviously testing out this new product at the time. So then I was able to get the internship as a result of that. So it was my kind of foot in the door. Worked incredibly hard that year, I remember, and did some additional projects over and beyond. And I, as I reflect ahead of this, I was looking back on those days and was thinking I worked harder than maybe was expected, and certainly harder than some of my peers. Um, but I think that's what helped me get that kind of advantage to come back, and they luckily rewarded me for that. So my parents have got, especially my mom has got a lot to, I've got a lot to thank her for that kind of work ethic and kind of why I've had all these various different jobs and applied myself in these situations because that's what kind of I learned from her really. So yeah, that was my foot in the door, if you like. And then they invited me back as a graduate, so I came back, and I'm sure I'll talk about that in a few moments about that story.
No, that's brilliant. And I think that, again, from all the people that I've spoken to, some I know better than others, but the commonality is around work ethic and had multiple jobs. And I think it's because a lot of the time you had to have multiple jobs to have any money because you didn't have the bank of mum and dad that some of our more privileged colleagues took advantage of. But equally, it's having the ability to identify those transferable skills and
Mm.
take something from each job that you've done as a skill in itself. And I think there's so much that can be brought from that that people just don't realize and just assume, well, how could I go and work at Microsoft when I went from building buses, or how can I go and, I think of a lot of salespeople, for example, that have come from customer services type backgrounds.
Yeah,
Anybody
yeah,
that's dealt with the public will know how to
absolutely.
deal with difficult people. And these are all transferable skills. So it's great that you applied that and also that you were aware of it.
It didn't come overnight. Certainly, I haven't even counted up the number of different jobs I've had, um, and different scenarios I find myself in. But I'm lucky enough to be able to talk about this to other younger people who are interested, and we'll talk about that probably in a bit. And who may be from similar backgrounds, and talking to them about trying to something I'm super passionate about because obviously I have my own background is building tech pathways for others, and helping them understand how they could best position themselves to be in a role maybe in the tech sector in the future. But regardless of their circumstances or their current job or situations, but I do encourage them to think of the part-time work that they had, not as in it might not be directly linked to a job in technology or something like that, but think about the actual scenarios. If you're working in a shop or if you're working in a car wash or whatever that might be, I could remember those times where it's not about how well I wash the car. It's about when something goes wrong, and maybe there was an instance when someone crashed into a car that was next that I was washing. How did
Yeah.
I respond to that? How did I deal with the people whose car, like, how do you operate in those situations, those scenarios? So I'm, very keen to get others to think about it's not about the actual job itself, it's about the
Yeah.
scenarios that you're in and then how you respond to them, because that's what people are looking for, Uh,
Yeah. What
so
great advice. That's fantastic. It's like in terms of like because I wouldn't have even thought about that. I would just think about the skills that you learned in that job and how they can transfer to another, like a
yeah, yeah,
leader,
yeah.
irrespective. But to actually go down to the different scenarios that you've encountered and how you coped with it or dealt with it in that given point is such great advice. And I'm sure, you've helped many people with that sort of process internally at Microsoft.
Yeah, for sure.
So what have been your biggest challenges and how have you, that you faced across your journey into your career and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so well, I say lucky, but I don't think you'll tell me off, and maybe rightly so. But um, I've been fortunate to have had a long career in the tech sector. Thus far, 10 years I've been at Microsoft at one employer, which has been incredible. I'm coming into my 10th year, looking back at and reflecting of the various different things I've done and the experiences that I've had and the many great mentors that I've had. And it's an incredible place to work, and they're super passionate to help others. And I think diversity and inclusion is a big part of what they do as well. But I think the social mobility thing is definitely something that, from a tech sector perspective, we could be doing much more of. And I'll talk about kind of the formation of the network and why we created it. But from my own personal experiences, coming into a professional role, not having anyone in my family go to university, not having anyone in my family really in a professional environment whatsoever, it was quite challenging, I think, to begin with, just to because it was alien to me, right? This corporate environment, like, what is it? How do you operate in it? So, all of those normal things that maybe would just come as second nature to maybe someone who's has come from a background where their parents had done a similar job, or their aunts or uncles. I kind of had to charter my own way through that a little bit. So that in itself, I think, was a bit of a challenge, trying to navigate that, and making sure that I'm working my network, I've got my mentors. Those types of things never came naturally, and they still don't. Right? I've got much better, but they still take work. But I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, is just knowing how to operate, and then being confident in yourself. And that's certainly something that I've built over the last few years, is building that inner confidence. And I've managed to do that because I've worked hard, and I know, and I've seen others, who maybe haven't applied themselves in the same way that I have in certain scenarios. I've managed to get that inner confidence because I know I'm working hard for it. So I kind of know my worth in that respect. So that's definitely a challenge in terms of navigating, but also a challenge in the confidence from the early stages. How to make sure that you feel confident. So yeah.
Yeah, and the more you do stuff, and the better you get, and the more confident you get. So nothing that we do, we're naturally very good at to start off with. It just takes
Mhm.
time and effort and energy, and knowing that you have to go through this process. But again, navigating the corporate corridors, I think, is again something that's come up quite consistently. You're not. It was a. You don't. I understand necessarily how to interact, or what to say, or how to present yourself in the same way. I mean, for me, I was the first person to go and work in an office, very similar to yourself. And I remember turning up for my first day at work, and I was literally wearing the same clothes that I'd be going down the pub in. So, like,
Mhm.
clubbing type outfits, which were not appropriate necessarily for the office, and certainly not when I was working in a company that was attached to a factory full of men. So, but no one told me that. And I was like, because I didn't know, no one had sort of given me that guidance. It's all those little things, like going to a restaurant for the first time with a client and not realizing that why have you got these extra sets of knives and forks, all of these little nuances that you're just not prepared for, and you have to figure it out. And some embarrassing stories along the way, but quite funny now when I look back on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's interesting because I think certain workplaces do have, you have to be professional, of course, but I think maybe there is maybe coming from similar backgrounds, as we do, maybe there is this eagerness to fit in,
Yeah.
and and to not be your authentic self. So you're off buying these clothes to look like everyone else, right? To to kind of fit that corporate mold, if you like. And I certainly felt that, but I don't think that pressure was coming from Microsoft. Microsoft has got this kind of tagline, if you like, "Come as you are, do what you love." So they're very much about being your authentic self. But I think just naturally coming into that environment, you just feel like, right, I must conform. And it has taken me a few years, but I'm very much I feel confident in myself to show up in my authentic self now, and that's something that we try and encourage others continually within the business to do as well. Another example of this, I talked about it at the start of the podcast, but was accents, and there is this term called code switching. I don't know if you've ever come across code switching before, but it's where it's a term that's used to where you code switch is changing your accent or your authentic self to fit into an environment. So it's something I think is unfortunately people feel the pressure to do whenever they come into a workplace, perhaps, and change the way that they act or the way that they speak. And again, that's something I felt maybe a little bit at the beginning, because I was coming from a small town in Northern Ireland where the accent was very broad, and I was asking questions and I could see that people weren't truly understanding what I was asking. So my accent's definitely toned down, and I've spoken slower as the years have passed, but I definitely don't want to lose it, and I don't have any intention to. But that is another thing about coming into a work environment is, being your authentic self, try not to feel that pressure of having to change your outfits or pretend you're interested in certain sports like golf whenever you're not really, or changing your accent. So yeah, that's also something that we try and encourage people to not worry too much about.
Yeah, and I definitely think that has evolved in much more positive direction than it was when I was certainly starting out. Obviously, I'm a lot older than you, Stephen. So I'm talking about my early career, which was many, many years ago. And I think the world has definitely changed. And, it was very much you had to show up as a corporate person. You had to wear the suits. You had to look like that from the company that I was working for. They were very much of that ilk. And I think that was, 30 years ago, just sharing my age there. But, in terms of where we've evolved, and Microsoft has been clearly incredible. And I think, yourself has spoken about it. Tony Kent speaks about it. I know other people that are at Microsoft and they have nothing but pure positive things to say about their embracing that authenticity. And I think you're very fortunate to work in such a progressive company,
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
not all organizations are like that.
No, no. And as I said, I've been somewhat of in a bit of a bubble, having been at the same employer for so long. So no, I understand and I completely appreciate. I think it's a journey that many I think organizations are going on. I think the onus should be on the professionalism, absolutely, but the at the same time, if you want people to show up and do their best work, they're going to do that whenever it's authentic to them, and it's something that they're able to do. So,
No, absolutely. And what has been the proudest moment of your career so far, and why is that?
um, yeah, I think it's a tricky one because it's there's been lots of really interesting moments, and I've been working, as I said, in my 10th year. The majority of that time I've spent in our partner organization. So as a partner development manager initially, aligned to managing a relationship with some of our systems integrators. I then moved on to do some work with independent software vendors. I then did a kind of channel sales role. And now I'm focused in on recruiting our fintechs onto kind of our platform and helping them grow and scale. So there's been lots of moments across those various different roles where I reflect, and I think where I kind of have very much enjoyed the engagement with the channel and how we work in partnerships, because it's not a really sales first approach. It's very much building partnerships and building trust,
Yeah.
and mutual benefit to benefit of both parties. So I'm proud of the partnerships that we've managed to build and grow throughout those years. And I look at some of the partners that I work with from the early stages, and seeing how they've grown and some of the stuff that they've managed to achieve over the last few years with us in partnership has been really amazing. So, and the engagement that you've got with them obviously is still standing, which is fantastic. But one of my proudest moments, I think, we talked about this at the beginning, is the social mobility network. So we set this up in Microsoft a couple of years ago, and I, alongside a few others, were part of a smaller group who kind of started it up. We were just having conversations about all coming from a similar lower socioeconomic background. And then we were like, right, okay, well, let's build a community or a network around that. And fast forward 2 years now since that conversation or those conversations, and we're over 250 people, and we've got and growing, and we've got a real mix of people from lived experiences or people who are allies and want to pay it forward. And I've been super proud to see the growth in that. Not only the growth, but also people are really excited to share stories of impact. Like, they'll go into their local area or regions and run an activity with a school with a high proportion of lower socioeconomic kids, and talk to them about careers in technology. And they'll tell the stories, or the individual stories even, and just to see so much interest and excitement and interest to do more. That's what's I'm probably most proud of, because we've managed to kind of generate that community, and they're all paying it forward in their own way. So it's definitely been one of my proudest things, is probably that, I would say.
Well, you're very right to be proud. It's an incredible achievement what you've done. I mean, that's amazing. And already paying it forward, helping others, bring everyone else with you. It's incredible. It's very rewarding, isn't it, when you can see the difference that it makes when you go out and put some effort and just inspire people from your own journey and try and get them to realize that they're not alone in this and they can achieve whatever they want. They've just got to change the way they think about it, and everybody deserves the same opportunities irrespective of where you've come from. We're all equals, and they should made to feel like that. So no, you should be incredibly proud.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are proud of the progress that we've made, but we're certainly not patting ourselves in the back yet, because there's a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, um, for those that may or may not have seen, there was a recent report done by the Tech Talent Charter, who is a charity who do reports on diversity and inclusion. And amongst some of the other stats that they collected as part of this report, one of the stats that they collected was only 9% of those that were surveyed in this report for the tech sector were identified as coming from a lower socioeconomic background. And that's in comparison to, I think, professional services and law, which were close to 30%. The general population, or the average, is at 39.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of work left to do in the tech sector. We've got to play our part, of course. We're a big part of that. And we have started through the network, and we've got other plans of things to do, but there's definitely much more that we could be doing to raise aspirations in the tech sector, to help improve the experience for those that come into the tech sector, and just keep an eye on making sure that those that are coming in are getting on as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're proud of the progress that we've made, but there's so much more to do, for sure.
I think, that report was one of the inspirations for us doing the podcast and also working closer with the Social Mobility Foundation, because I think
Yeah.
the problem is getting worse, not better. To part, I think some of it is down to data. Not everybody wants to share where they've come from. So it's how, in terms of how we're collecting that information, but it's definitely, we're seeing a lot of apprenticeships that would go to traditionally people from a low socioeconomic background being taken up by more privileged people that have gone to private education, that have just decided they don't want to do university. So it's sort of, how can we tackle it from all ways? But then once they're in, how can we attract them? But then once they're in, what can we do to help support them on that journey? But yeah, we're with you on that one, Stephen. We didn't like that stat either. So
Yeah,
we can do together to help change that. So
absolutely.
how do you think that coming from a low social economic background has impacted your career either positively or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the stats don't lie in terms of the challenges that those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds face. And I think, let me start there because I think there is much more that could and should be done to help level the playing field so that others have the same opportunities. Your postcode or your occupation of your parents shouldn't determine your outcomes in life, and unfortunately, that is still the case for many. So I think more generally, I think it's still very much having a negative impact, and I'm sure it has done on my career in certain ways. But I'm I would describe myself as an optimist, I guess. And I feel, and maybe this is just my mindset and approach to it, but I feel it's probably had a net positive for me in the sense that I've had challenges and barriers for sure, but I think those challenges and barriers have helped build resiliency. They've helped build confidence, knowing that actually my work ethic is what, and applying myself is, what has helped get me and help progress me as it has been doing. So I definitely had to work harder, which is maybe something that isn't fair, but I've taken opportunities that have come my way, and I've got this idea of kind of why not me? If I work hard, and why should someone who's
For you.
maybe more privileged or from a different background, but maybe won't apply themselves in the same way, why would they deserve that other than? So I think it's created this kind of challenger mindset maybe in me in terms of why not, so I think that's probably helped me, but it's not been without its challenge, for sure.
Yeah, I think again, resilience and grit is another commonality between people from this
Yeah.
demographic in terms of they're used to being knocked down and getting back up again and dusting themselves off, as well as the work ethic that comes with it. So, and it's learning to embrace that skill that not everyone has. If you're come from a more privileged upbringing, sometimes you're a little bit mollycoddled or wrapped in cotton wool, and when things go wrong, you just don't know how to deal with it. Whereas if you're just used to stuff going wrong all the time, or being given situations that there's only you to deal with, then it just builds this natural resilience and grit that has certainly for me personally as well helped me on my career for sure. So knowing what you know now and what you've achieved, what would you say to a younger version of Stephen?
Yeah, good question. Um, I think I know that one of the things that um, they teach in private schools is confidence, right? And that's kind of drilled in at the very beginning, right? Confidence, confidence going into, or so I'm told. I wouldn't know, but that's one of the things that I think maybe younger people who maybe aren't fortunate enough to have that experience for them to consider is about confidence and building that confidence. And it's easy to say you're confident, it's harder to be confident, and I think that is something that will come with time about building that inner confidence. So if I was saying to my younger self, I would say don't worry, like everyone gets imposter syndrome at various different parts of their life, but accepting that, and then uh, don't always try and be the smartest person in the room, but be the person that applies themselves and is proactive and asks questions of others, like lean on others, collaborate with others. So it's about build that confidence, but also be proactive and collaborative. And I think that would set you in good stead.
Good bit of advice this there. And what support and help do you think that companies could be doing to help individuals from a low social economic background? I mean, obviously, what you're doing is amazing with the social mobility network, but is there anything else that you think they could be doing, or what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so I know an organization we both work closely with, who are fantastic, is the Mobility Foundation, and they are one of quite a few really great charities focused in on this specific area, trying to figure out how do we help, or how do they help, obviously, others on this journey. And I would say that employers, um, knowing where to start is often the challenge. There's a wealth of resource out there, but sometimes that can actually be a little bit overwhelming. So I would say look to try and align yourself to one of the charities. Social Mobility Foundation is a fantastic charity. You've also got a few others. And also the Social Mobility Commission provides some really good detail on how to start your social mobility journey as well. So try and get connected into that community of charities or organizations, and ask for support, show up at events, learn from others. I think if I reflect back on the last couple of years and how we've built the Microsoft Social Mobility Network, a lot of people are very passionate about this topic, and as a result, a lot of people are very generous with their time, and they're happy to share what they've went through, some of the pitfalls, how did they set this up, how did they operate in this scenario. So I would encourage you to reach out to some of those charities. The SMF is an example of Social Mobility Foundation. If you're an employer, I encourage you to look at their employer index, because
Yeah.
that kind of ranks the top 75 employers in the UK who's actually, intentionally focusing in on this. So reach out to them, engage with their content, and maybe have a look at some of the organizations in that list. And if they look like you, or if you're interested in going on this journey too, then maybe try and engage and see if there's any ways that they can help you on that journey. But
Yeah,
to start.
we had the same of you. Don't reinvent the wheel. Let's work with somebody that's already doing a great job in this area, and how can we help amplify what they're doing and support them, as opposed to try and start from scratch. And we both know, the Social Mobility Foundation are an incredible organisation, and we've already done some great work with Sarah Atkinson and her team. She's come and spoken to some other individuals across the reseller industry, across like Computer Centre, Softcat, and are all agreed to sign up to that employer index. So more people, please do that.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure. Please do. The tech sector needs to step up, and we're looking
does.
to help there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what one piece of advice would you give to somebody that's coming from a low social economic background who is trying to navigate a career in the channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is for sure lots of potential here. I think it's for me, I think this is probably the most exciting time to be considering a career in technology, with everything that's happening. And I think there, as a result, there's a wealth of learning out there that you can get involved in. So I find probably events and activities that align to your interest areas, but find, probably the easiest thing to say is try and find the things that give you energy, because that will probably help you determine the areas that you want to kind of grow and develop. And not all roles in the channel or the tech sector are technical, right? There are marketing roles, there are business development roles. I'm not technical. I've been at Microsoft 10 years, and I still wouldn't define myself as a techie, but sometimes I surprise myself. But marketing or business development or partner management, there are various different roles, are very people focused. So don't just shy away from it because you think it's unreachable. And whenever you do find those areas that, give you energy, and the roles that you're looking for, it's about telling your story in a way that others can see the skills and the skills and the value that you're bringing. So I think storytelling is a big part as well.
That's great advice. Steven, you have well and truly smashed that class ceiling. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I'm really pleased to be coming along today, so thank you.
No, it's been great. Thank you so much.